That Sober Guy podcast contains adult content, merciless truth, and emotional nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
I'm Shane Ramey. You're listening to That Sober Guy podcast. If it's your first time listening, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here today. If you're looking to quit or cut back on your drinking, we have one of the best 30-day alcohol-free challenges out there. It's helped hundreds of men all over the country quit drinking alcohol. Sign up today. You can check out all of our other podcasts and resources by going to thatsoberguy.com. Please give us a follow on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. All the links from today's show will be in the show notes, so they're very easy for you to find. Shout out to Humans Music. Always digging the intro. Our guest today is Ray Trapani, and Ray is the co-founder of Centra Tech and Miami Exotics. He's also the main character in a recent Netflix documentary by director Bryan Storkel titled Bitconned. Now, Bitconned is about the Centra Tech crypto scam by Ray and his partners. In the true crime documentary, Ray and his business partners exploit the early cryptocurrency market to scam millions of dollars from investors and bankroll lavish lifestyles. And you might go, cool, that sounds interesting, but like, why is Ray coming on a sober podcast? And when I watched Bitconned a couple of weeks back, it was obvious to me that there was way more to this story and way more to Ray's life than just businesses and lavish lifestyles and Lamborghinis and crazy stuff going on. And of course, scamming people out of millions of dollars through Centra Tech. There was a massive addiction problem as well. There was addiction to pills, to gambling, and really to the criminal lifestyle. And I also saw that there was a kid who grew up without a father. Who shares on this podcast. You won't see it in the film, but Ray shared today that he was molested by his stepbrother, and that he started taking drugs even before he was a teenager. So I wanted to have Ray on the show to explain more about his life, more about his addiction, and of course more about his recovery, which he does in today's podcast. And so much of his life is not really seen in the documentary, which they recorded over 100 hours of film with him. And then we only see about an hour and a half of that film, in the documentary of his life, really in the documentary itself. So there's a lot there. Now, before we go into the interview, many people have opinions about Ray. Rightfully so. And I think he would agree with me that a lot of people still don't really like him because of his past and because of the things that he did. And everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I would definitely encourage you to watch the film yourself after you listen to the podcast and form your own opinion. As I was getting ready to release this, I started thinking, God gave us all free will, and all men have a choice. And sometimes we make the right choice, and sometimes we make the wrong choice, and sometimes we make a lot of wrong choices. I definitely have made a lot of bad decisions in my life. At the end of the day, each one of us has to stand before God and account for our deeds in the world. The good ones, the bad ones. God doesn't judge us on our perfection. He judges us on our repentance. And Jesus says it very clearly in Matthew 9:12 and 13. It says, when Jesus heard this, he said, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Then he added, now go and learn the meaning of this scripture. I want you to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I've come to call not those who think they're righteous, but those who know they're sinners. God doesn't want my sacrifice. He doesn't want my perfection. He doesn't want my good deeds. He doesn't want to hear my righteous judgments of other people's faults and sins. He simply wants me to repent. I'm a human being and I'm sick. He wants to show me mercy, and he wants me to show mercy to others. He wants me to forgive others. And in turn, I can be forgiven when I meet him face to face. I hope you enjoy today's show. Here's Ray Trapani. Ray Trapani, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, my friend. East Coast to West Coast, West Coast to East Coast. I like it. So it's great to have you. How are you tonight?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Good. Yeah. So I guess maybe in setting this up a little bit, you recently were part of a documentary on Netflix called Bitconned, and definitely encourage those out there listening to go check that out. I think it was just released within the last couple of weeks or so, right?
Yeah, on the 1st it was released.
Great documentary. I love the obviously the story behind it is super interesting. I like the way it was produced. Definitely an artistic feel to it, with a crazy ass synopsis at the same time. So, and I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of that as the conversation takes shape. Really though, one of the things that struck me, obviously you battled addiction in that, in your life early on growing up. And I would really, they covered some of that in the documentary, but I really just thought, I'd love to hear kind of your take a little bit more on that and dive into that. So maybe if we just start give us a little background about yourself. So people can get to know who Ray is.
Yeah, I got you. I grew up in Long Island. And like most people, your listeners would probably know Long Beach. That's a surf town in Long Island in New York. It's like 45 minutes from the city, so you kind of get the best of both worlds in that sense.
Yeah.
It's a cool town, but it's basically just like a blue collar surf town, similar to a lot of places in California. Just where everybody, pretty much the kids all summer. I mean, it's different for you guys because it's nicer weather all year round, but the summers are pretty much just a lot of weed smoking and a lot of surfing. But as far as growing up, it was my mom was a single mom. And she was working in the ICU 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, just to try to grind and get overtime. So we had really no guidance, right? My dad was out of the picture before I was born. So just no guidance in that sense. And then where my addiction really started was my childhood was relatively good early on, right? Like decent house, middle class, mom's busting her ass, but we were happy. Yeah. And then my mom remarried, and then I had 2 older brothers, and then 2 stepbrothers came with the new marriage. And from at like age 8, I started getting molested by my stepbrother. So that was like the real turn of my brain, right? Where like I got fucked up. Yeah. And then that happened from like 12 to 8, and I mean 8 to 12, and I always kind of thought my whole family knew. So like I started like just completely detaching from the world. And that's like really, and then like at 12, that same stepbrother started giving me weed. And then pretty much like I was like just starting to smoke weed. And then I like also like all my older brothers were selling weed. So like I was just, and they were also like starting to take pills and shit like that. That was back in the day before people really had like any understanding how bad pills could be. Like, this is probably, I was born in 91. So this is probably 2003-ish, right? Somewhere around there. So like no one really was talking about like how bad, the opiate epidemic is or this type of shit yet. Yeah. And everybody was just kind of experimenting with it, right? And then from there, pretty much like by like 13, one of my other brothers gave me like a Xanny at the beach. I remember that was like my first time taking a pill, but it, like you can't blame that brother, right? Like he was just at the beach. He was only 15. He's chilling with all his boys, and I'm like the younger brother that just like had no guidance and it was just always around and just hanging around. He was just popping pills with his boys and gave me a half a Xanny, and I just took it. And I was like, all right, I like the way it felt right away. And then it kind of just from there by like 14, one of my best friends was like his older brother was like the major pot dealer for all of New York. So by like 14, I was already seeing hundreds of pounds of weed and like probably millions in cash just sitting it throughout the house every day. We're going there to play video games and just like smoke weed. All the weed's free, obviously. And he's just basically like take whatever amount of weed you need. So like we just had unlimited access to pod and cash. And then even by then we're like, I also, besides just the drug addiction, I was gambling by like 12, 13 as well, which was like probably my worst addiction is actually gambling.
Yeah.
As far as financially.
Yeah. I think I saw a clip, one of the recent podcasts you were on, I didn't catch the name of it, but you had met another friend of yours in one of the casinos out there and just started kind of gambling together and gambling a lot of money. And they do talk about that a little bit in the documentary as well. So
you don't know who that guy is?
I don't.
You don't, he's like a pop singer, but he's like 50 million on Instagram. He's popular. I mean, like
I'm old, man.
Jason Derulo
I'm like 40, I'm like 42, man. I'm old.
Yeah, I don't listen to his music. Like I think his music's like, it's just not like, I was a rap guy. So but when I seen him at the table, I knew who he was. I was like, I was like, fuck it, you can sit here, you know.
That makes a little more sense now that you say that too, because I'm looking at it, I'm like, he looks like a cool cat, man. He's, he got a cool shirt on, lots of style. That's funny though. And you guys kind of hit it off and ended up, becoming friends or whatever, from what I understand. But anyways, I mean to sidestep us there, but I mean, so basically, like good. You started like so young, man, like at 12, 13 years old. Like my daughter's 13 right now. So I think about that. I put that in context, like, wow, that's a lot to, to take on at such a young age. And I want to point out too, one of the very interesting parts that I thought in the documentary was they asked you about your father, and you already mentioned your father, wasn't around, and I can't quote you exactly, but it was something like, he's a fucking loser. Like, what more can you say? I mean, can you dive into that a little bit more? Did he just bounce out? Or, I mean, how not having a man in the house to lead young men, we know that's a huge epidemic right next to the drug epidemic, the alcoholism, all that stuff. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because since I've been sober now 5 years, so like I filmed that scene like 4 years ago, right? And then now I'm close to my dad over like the last 2 years. We've kind of rekindled, and so like now that came out, and I don't even remember what I said, So like it's funny. I felt bad when as soon as I was watching it like early release before anybody saw it, and Netflix had sent me like a couple of days early, and I was like, I knew he was gonna see it, and then he's got coworkers and shit like that. Wow. So I was a little. It is what it is, He the truth is that he wasn't around. He left before I was born, and like he just anytime like we would go see him, he would like have a new girlfriend over, like just. And he was a drug addict also, right? Like that's why they separated him. My mom freebasing coke, like they're pretty much their whole relationship. Union construction guy in New York, and just always doing wild shit, same shit. But then like once you have kids and you see like how hard it is and all this type of shit, you can see how easily those screws can get loose, right? Especially if you're still on drugs during that time. Yeah. So like I don't really. Like I'm not the type of person to hold a lot of resentment. I've done a lot of fucked up shit in my life that, it is what it is. You kind of got to move past those type of things. It's just like when I filmed with Netflix, I was filming like 8 to 10 hours a day, days in a row. And I filmed for like 100 hours with them. So like I said, all the most outlandish shit that you can ever think of, from sex stories to drug stories to hooker stories, gambling stories. And most of it isn't in it, right? If it's only an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So, they chose to put that in there, and, they were just basically trying to paint whoever they wanted me to look as, and that's what they put in there.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah,
how now everything's good with him.
I will, number one, thanks for sharing that. And I'm really glad to hear that, that you guys have kind of, I wasn't expecting that, honestly, because like you said, like you filmed 100 hours, as a viewer, we see an hour and a half of that, and you can only fit in so much stuff in an hour and a half. And isn't it interesting, like when we start to see our parents like as people, and then we have our own kids, right? But then now like like I see my dad. I have my own issues with my father. He's still out on the street and like doing his thing, but I see him as like a human being now. I see him as a person. Like I see him as somebody who struggles with addiction, and I've also had to do a lot of work and, you know, resentment and all that stuff that comes along with forgiveness and all that. But it's helped to heal some of that. And have you experienced that too, with being able just to see your father like as a dude now, just as a person himself? And what, like, how was that? How did you do it? Trying, you know, forgiveness and trying to rekindle that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, since I had gotten sober, like when I first started filming with Netflix, I was still on like pre-trial probation, which is in federal court. You're like right away, as soon as you get out of jail, you're on pre-trial up until sentencing. So like I hadn't done like any sort of work, right? Like I had been sober, you know, I had all the time over my head. And then I, like 2 years in, after like filming that first interview, I started, I got my KSAC and I started working with addicts and like sexual abuse victims and all this type of shit. And then like I, just through talking to everybody else and just hearing these consistent stories and all this type of shit, you know, you kind of just sooner or later, like, and then I had kids and he wanted to see the kids, and he would just come around once in a while. Right. And, you know, he was doing the right thing by his grandkids, and, you know, he still has like his faults to the max. Right. Like we all do.
Yeah.
And, some of his ways he's stuck in, but I just, even my stepbrother that molested me, I don't even have resentment towards him these days. Like I, you know, talk about all the shit that I did, you know, as much as like for me, it's easier to talk about my stepbrother's situation, because like, I don't know, for some reason that had the most resentment for me. Like my father's shit, like it was easier to get over, right? Like, but the stepbrother shit was hard. But then you're like, you know what? I was 8, he was like 12. Yeah. Just a horny little boy in the house, you know, like shit happens, you know, like whatever. It is what it is. How can I like forever hold on to that? Like it wasn't a grown ass man doing that shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think did that make it a little bit easier to deal with, just being able to understand that he was just a kid too? And I keep hearing the phrase in my mind, I'm sure you've heard this before too, like hurt people hurt people. You know what I'm saying? When we have trauma from when we grow up, from kids, so many people, then we turn around and we tend to have our own issues, and then, you know, stuff happens sometimes. But dude, that's crazy that, cause that's such a serious thing too. You know what I mean? Like being molested at such a young age. And for you to be able to, you know, work through that, I think is pretty, it's pretty insane actually, man. And so do you still talk with him, or do you have any relationship with him, or is that like, it was forgiveness?
Nah,
like
they've been divorced for a while now. My mom and my stepdad. So like, I haven't seen him but it's just that like holding any resentment just was doing me no good. And then through talking through these other people, I would see these people that like I molested as kids, and they were just 50, 60 years old, and they're still so fucking beat down by that shit, and they're like still want to kill the person. I'm like, this like I got to be better than that, right? Like, and I think sometimes through hearing other people's experiences, you got to just be able to have some self-realization of like, oh shit, like I can use this to better myself. How can I do that? And that's what helped me for sure.
Amen to that, man. So we kind of derailed, I think, about 13. So like, let's like backtrack to that, like 13, like where does that like drug and just like the gambling and entrepreneurship, you're a smart dude, obviously. Like, I mean that, like, so that mind, that kind of, I don't know if your mind's anything like mine, but it's constantly going. It's hard to turn off sometimes. And when I get an idea, it's like, boom, let's go. And so your life accelerated really fast at a young age. So like, how did that proceed, like 13 and then beyond that?
Yeah. So I like, I just told this story too. Like at like 13 going on to be 14, going into my first high school year, I think it was, I started selling weed. And then I like killed it that summer. Right. Like, and I was taking like, just, you know, regular kid shit, smoking weed, popping a couple pills, no addiction yet. Right. I mean, I'm more addicted to just like the overall scene of everything. And I killed it that summer. I made like 10, 15 grand. And I went into high school with all 20s, 10 grand in my pocket every single day. Right. And at this point, I'm also gambling like at these like high stakes underground Orthodox Jewish poker games. Odd scenario in New York. That's just what it was.
That's crazy. So would you say that, is it fair to say you became addicted to money at a young age too?
Yeah, for sure. That was like, it's still like my biggest addiction. That's like where I'm still trying to break that. I mean, I'm pretty good these days, like where I'm just reserved. And, when you have like real responsibilities, it's a little different. Yeah. But at those young ages, when you have no responsibility, no guidance, and then you just have access to cash, it's become so addicting. And you can see pictures of me, like even from 10, 12, like all those ages, every picture I'm holding up cash. Like I was just a little wise ass sticking my middle finger up at everybody, holding up cash. Yeah. And then so then that goes on. That's like kind of my cycle, like 13th, 5th to 10th grade. And then at 16, I went to a poker game like in Long Island, there was poker games everywhere. Like everybody trying to open up their own underground poker game. So they can just take their rake and make their money. And then coming home, I was taking Xannies that night at the game. And then on the way home, bad car accident, car flips like 10, 15 times. My whole face gets chopped into pieces. And I go to the hospital, and basically about a week later, I get prescribed Oxycontin. So like at 16, I'm prescribed. And then back then it was so fucked up. Like the doctors would prescribe 120 Oxycontin to a kid going back to high school at 16 years old. 4 Oxycontin 30s a day is ridiculous. I don't know what your addiction was, but that's a crazy amount of Oxycontin.
Yeah, that was like the pill mill days too, right? Like just writing scripts and just handing them out like candy. I actually never got addicted to those. I did try them a couple of times and I didn't like them. Just 'cause I got sick off of them. So, I know how addictive they can be because I've seen other people, and yeah, it's crazy. And so you're getting prescribed 120 of these things. Like, I mean, obviously you're not going to take all those. You're making some money off of them, right?
Yeah. So I definitely started selling them because I was already selling other shit, selling weed or selling Xannies. But that like I had taken a few Oxycontins up until that point, but I was still just trying them, right? Like nothing crazy. But then once I got those, and then I ended up getting a lawsuit pretty shortly after that. And I was still at this point, like I still thought my family knew about what happened and never had brought it up. So like I kind of was still angry at my family. So as soon as I got that lawsuit, it was like 50 grand at 16, unlimited prescription of Oxycontin. I was like, all right, I'm gone. I moved out at 16. I got my grandfather to co-sign for me, like to sign as the adult or whatever it was. Cause he was like my guiding force there, like my father figure. And he was, an old school gangster. And I was just like, all right, bet. And he helped me get that spot. And then my first move was like, I bought 10 ounces of Coke. I was going to be the biggest Coke dealer. I had no regular thought as like a 16-year-old kid. So I'm oxied out of my face, selling Coke like a maniac. Like I remember meeting this, like I had to get like a Spanish kid that I knew to translate to meet this like connection in Long Island. But I ended up getting the Coke.
Yeah.
So now I'm 16. I'm like full blown addicted to Oxycontin. Going to high school, selling Coke, selling weed, pretty much selling whatever I can get my hands. I was selling mushrooms, ecstasy, everything at that point. And I'm like the bad kid in school, super young. I'm still not even a senior yet. And but me and my friend group were they're all like living, like not living there. They were going back home every once in a while, but pretty much staying at my place like a couple nights a week. It's like the little trap spot that we're all just getting fucked up in. It was just, super unhealthy environment for any kids to be in.
Yeah.
But then from there, you got.
Oh yeah.
You want me to keep going or?
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah.
Yeah. So then like I think I got arrested for like having a few hundred Xanax and like a co-op of weed or something like that, driving around, going to like high school parties. Then I got a DUI and controlled substance charge. But like when you're that young, those charges were just getting kind of wiped away.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would do like, and then like, but those are my first times getting sober, right? You get sober for like 6 months, do drug court or whatever it is. And, those are like, and then like I dropped out of high school, like going into senior year, or like I kind of went a little bit of senior year and I was like, all right, fuck high school. I'm not doing this shit.
Yeah.
I was just full blown doing drugs, selling drugs. Got caught a couple other times for other shit, basically just different drug charges. And I ended up getting into like my grandfather's like, all right, you're sober now, you're on drug court. Get into the union. He got me a union card, like skipped the apprenticeship straight into a full buck. So now I'm like 19, like 6 months sober. I was probably 125 pounds, working with grown ass, big,
Yeah.
like scaffolding guys, and I was just in there like a little fiend.
You were so he made you were a journeyman scaffold builder right off the bat. Like no apprenticeship.
Yeah, my first job was at the no apprenticeship. First job at the New World Trade Center.
Really? Oh wow.
I was like, yeah,
dang.
Yeah. I worked there for like a year and a half, just at the World Trade Center, taking down like a hoist, on the side of the building.
Yeah.
That was like my first job. They already finished like putting those windows in on that run, so they were just taking down the hoist. But I just I couldn't lift shit. I was so skinny and cracked out still.
Yeah.
And right away, I jumped on testosterone. I was like, I gotta catch up to these fucking guys.
Yeah. How long did it take before you were like, yeah, I'm not really into this? Like, I mean, that's hard work.
I was pretty jacked for a little bit there.
Really?
Yeah, it's hard work for sure.
Yeah.
I got jacked by like a year in, just from the testosterone and push-ups, but and working, right? Yeah. But then like sooner or later, I was just like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. And I went and visited my boy down in Miami, and once I got off probation, or like the drug court finished, I was, how that always goes. You start taking a few pills again or whatever it is you're addicted to. And I was slowly getting back into my addiction. I went and visited my boy down in South Florida. It wasn't Miami. It was like by Boca, which is like 45 minutes outside of Miami. And he was just like, yeah, like my roommate just got locked up. Come move down here. And I literally flew back that same day and drove down in like my Toyota Camry. At the time I was driving like, not a Toyota Camry, it was like a Chevy Impala, but like one of the old ones.
Yeah.
And I just drove down there. And then once I got down there, like I had like a little bit of money saved from the construction shit, but not a lot, right? But then I figured out this new scam, like right as soon as I got down there with my boy, this Venmo scam, I haven't even told this story yet, but before the cars happened, I figured out this new scam with Venmo where it was like, basically, as soon as you create an account on Venmo, you used to be able to, this is back before they fixed it, probably because of us, but you used to be able to just, as soon as you transfer like $5 on a new account from Venmo, even if you have no money in your account and your account has that $5 history, you'd be able to transfer $3,000 to anybody, and it would just hit your account, and then it would bounce off your account, and then you'd only get a charge for $35 overdraft fee, but the person would already get the $3,000 and be able to cash it out.
What?
And once I figured that out, I was like, holy shit. Like, and then we did it once, and then I was like, all right, now take that 3,000, cash it out, and then from your account, send $3,000 to this next person. And then it worked, and it just kept working. It was nuts for a while there.
Wow.
And then I started doing that. Like probably 10 times a day, right? Like 30 grand a day, every single day. And I was like, this is my first, like, I had done like a big pill scam that's in the documentary, which people will see that through the documentary back in the day. But like, this was my first, like I was like, oh shit, this is a real hustle, right? Like 30 grand a day is a ton of fucking money.
Would you call it
And then
the endless money glitch? What was it in the movie?
Yeah.
Like
They liked that statement. They liked that that line I said. I think
something like that.
they took a few lines that I said and they really ran with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, my first one was like a prescription pill fraud back in the day that like when I was 17, 18, I made a ton of money. But this was like a scam that wasn't covered in the documentary. It was the Venmo scam. And shit, man, I made a fortune. I probably ended up I made enough to be able to fund Miami Exotics. That's like kind of how I parlayed into Miami Exotics, because sooner or later, like after I took, I was getting like 10 people a day, but then like your people run out of people that you know that can do it.
Yeah.
So I started making like fake Instagram accounts and basically just getting people off the internet, like with these random accounts, to just basically give me all their personal information. Now I'd be like, oh, I'll give you half of the money once we do the transaction, and I'd have them send the transaction. And then sometimes I break them off. Sometimes I just probably dead them, to tell you the truth.
So how long did that last for before like Venmo? And that's crazy. How did you figure that out anyways? Was it just like a random stroke of luck, or like that's crazy.
It's funny. Like I would say it was a stroke of luck.
Yeah.
But I'm the type of person that like I push on like every single angle of things a lot in life.
Yeah.
Where like that's why I feel like I'm in these situations more so than other people that are like trying to commit crimes, right? Like people just kind of a lot of times end up being just like one trick ponies and they do the same thing over and over. I'm like always pushing these angles on like just different shit, right? Like I was down there just sitting on the balcony and I'm like, hold up, let me like those apps were kind of new at that time. And I just downloaded it and I was like some people wouldn't even think to try to send the money.
Yeah.
But I just like, you know how like sometimes on certain things, like the button will turn blue if you're like able to click it, but until usually it doesn't even highlight.
Yeah.
I just was like typing in extra and I saw that pop up. Like I was like sometimes it'll just give you an error message, but then shit, boom, just hit. Yeah. And I was like,
that's crazy. So let me, I want to say something real quick before we go, because I want to get into Miami Exotics and hear a little bit about that, like how that actually, you actually started this legitimate business and backstory behind that. But like, I didn't realize too that you filmed the documentary like 4 years ago too. So seeing it as a viewer, once again, like we're just seeing what that is, that hour and a half of like right now, and like, oh look, there's Ray. So real simple question, like, are you today the man that you were in that documentary? Like,
no, even in the documentary, like a lot of the scenes I'm asking the director, like, what do you want me to say? Because you want to play up your old self, right? So like you want to sell the documentary as much as you possibly could. So you're like even there's a scene that I have like an exact example of like about the house. I was talking about like financial times in America, and then there's a part of me talking about that, but then there's a part of me just asking the director, what do you want me to say here? That I bought everything off doing some shady shit. And he took those two things and cut them together to make it look like I said I bought the house off doing some shady shit. Yeah. So like there's just like every single time we would film, like after you film for so long, you're like, all right, what would make this like scene the best, right? Like, what do you want me to say here that's like really gonna play out this villain role the best for you? So no, like I'm not even anything really like that at all anymore, right? Like I'm like a goofy guy that just like kind of dances around with his kids and just trying to fuck around on the internet now and just trying to figure out life in the sense of a guy with 12 felonies, right? Like it's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I appreciate you breaking that down. And kind of the reason I ask that too is because, I read, how do I say this? A lot of people have a lot of opinions, right? Obviously. I'm sure you see them, or maybe you don't, I don't know, on social media, responding to the criminal acts that you took, part in. I specifically love doing this show and working with people in general, and particularly men who have made mistakes in their life, who have done shitty things, but have asked for, redemption. I believe God redeems every man who wants to be redeemed, and we can change, and we can make amends and right our wrongs, in other words. And so just kind of before we went forward, I kind of wanted to establish that, you know, like, yes, you've already admitted you've made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure you're still working through those. You said 12 felonies. That's a whole nother thing to try to live life with and you know, have a family and all that. But I kind of wanted to hear, you know, your take, like, you're not that same guy today. You know what I mean? Right. You're still, you know, you're trying to move on from that and put the pieces back together and be a decent human being.
Yeah, 100%. Like, my whole thing is that, like, where people don't like me, as far as like the documentary is my smirks and my laughs in bad times, right?
Yeah.
But like, I look like, this guy's an asshole. Like, but like, people don't realize, like, I'll talk about me getting molested and I'll make a rape joke about it. You know, like, that's just who I am. Like, you've probably seen sickos like this in the meetings and shit like that, where like sometimes that's just our way through our trauma, is just by laughing through it. And it's like, some of these crimes, like a lot of those smirks and laughs, like in the documentary, if you say some shit like that and you hear yourself back in your head, like it plays back, like especially on camera, you're thinking about everything you say, like, oh fuck, like that sounds terrible. But they don't like let you say that's terrible part. They just have like the little like this part, you know, like that original smirk laugh, and it looks like I'm a scumbag in that way, right? Which I don't give a fuck. Like I still laugh about literally everything, you know, and like I've on the internet aspect, like I try to tell people, like, yeah, I'm sorry people lost money. It is what it is, you know. Like, I'm definitely more sorry that actual individuals lost money than Venmo as a corporation, but that's besides the point. So that's that. I mean, that whole aspect of it, of like who I was in the documentary, is definitely not the full picture, right? Like, they don't even have like any of the trauma or the redemption end of it, or like, still, you know, I'll get to the ending sentence when we get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then like, so now the Venmo thing happens. I stack like a good amount of money from that, maybe like $250,000 or whatever it was. And I parlayed that into like I asked a lot of my family, like, guys, I'm doing well. I was popping Xannies left and right, like starting to pop Xannies more and more at this point. But I'm like, guys, I'm down in Florida. Like, I'm working. Me and my boy that I was living with, we had like a regular job as well. And I was just telling them, like, guys, I'm killing it down here, but I want to open up a business. And then I asked for some personal loans in their name to get like cars. I had drawn up like a whole business plan on like how the business will work and why it's going to be so profitable down there. And I got some people in my family to help me get car loans. And that's how I started Miami Exotics. And Miami Exotics was great, but it like throws you into this crazy fast paced life.
Yeah.
Where like, I'm already taking Xannies, but like, to be in Miami with a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or, you know, Aston Martin, whatever car it is, and then you have all the women around you, it's overwhelming, especially as an addict.
Yeah.
And then I started gambling. There's casinos down in South Florida. So like, and I'm down there just, you know, freeballing it by myself, just trying to figure out like how to run my first business, where I had no idea what I was doing. You know, in all reality.
How
and then
old
the
were
business
you?
started taking off.
You're like,
I'm like 24.
Oh, 24. Okay. Got it.
No, at this point, I'm probably like 23, 24, somewhere in that range.
Okay.
Like, I was down there for a little bit. There's the construction I started at 19. I probably left it at like 21, maybe 22 almost. And then I go down there, Venmo, fucking around, whatever it is. You know, there's obviously breaks there. I don't know where the fucking timeline exactly is. My brain is Zanny fried in a sense, where like, I'm terrible with dates.
But you're a young kid, and now you're like thrust into this business, and you got a lot of money like to do, you know, and a lot of drugs.
Yeah, and I've access to like basically millions of dollars, like $1 million or $500,000 in cash, every single car you can imagine, and the business is starting to do really well. So like, I'm just racking in money, but like, I had no money management at this point, right? Me and my partners were, you know, say profiting $60,000 a month. That money's just disappearing and spending more than $60,000 a month, which is madness.
Yeah.
If you're making $60,000 profit and you're going over that, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, but that was like hanging out with celebrities every single day, going to the club. in Miami, you can spend 10 grand in a night just getting a table, popping bottles, just being a degenerate. So that's pretty much my life there for a while. And I'm just basically like, my Xanax addiction is just getting worse and worse. And I have like the type of addiction, I'm the type of person where like, my tolerance just continues to build, to a point where that business starts to go left. And I ended up losing like $100,000. I started a fight with my partners because money was starting to go missing, and like checks were getting written. And they were telling me, both of them were telling me it was each other. Like this partner was telling me it was this partner, and I didn't know who the fuck to believe because they're both great speakers, right? Like both kind of good comment in that way. And so I'm like, fuck you guys. And I just took like the last few $100,000, or like it was a little over $100,000. I flew to Vegas, and I'm like, fuck it, I'm gonna go play in the World Series of Poker. And I'm just gonna risk it all, right? Whatever happens, I'm either gonna come back, or I'm gonna be able to pay off all my family's debts and go back to New York, or I'm just gonna lose it all and kill myself. That was like my plan right there. It was just, full blown. This is it. I'm either gonna make it all, or I'm gonna lose it all, and I'm gonna die. All or nothing. And I ended up losing it all. And that night, I went into my hotel room in I'm trying to think what hotel, whatever, one of these casinos where the World Series of Poker was hosted that year. And I took like maybe 60 Xanax.
Damn.
A bunch of Suboxone that I had with me. I took a bunch of those, and then I basically just fell asleep. I remember thinking about always up until that point where like I had contemplations about suicide. I always would think of my grandfather, and that was like the one time where like I thought of him, and I just still went through with it. It was fucked up because like there was debt in his name. So like it really hurt, like in that sense where like I was like, damn, I failed my grandfather, who was like always the one that kind of held me back from killing myself in the past. And I ended up just waking up like 20 hours later, fucking
damn.
And like, you don't know what to do. I didn't even have any drugs left. You're like in a Vegas hotel. But, as an addict, you're like, fuck the drugs. I don't got drugs left. It's not about surviving. It was like, fuck. And from there, like I just like called my mom, cried it out. That was like that moment there. And but I still wasn't ready to face like my grandparents or tell anybody what was going on. I'm like, all right, mom, let me go back and figure out what I can do. And I went back and I figured out this little scheme where I basically I sold one of my cars, but I sold the guy that bought it. I gave him a fake title, so I didn't have to pay off the car loan on the loan. And I got like a few $100,000 for one of the cars. Damn. That I was able to put back into play to be able to parlay into what ended up being Centra Tech.
So that was one of the cars from Miami Exotics you had a fleet of cars, I think, right? Like different types. So that was one of those cars.
Yeah, but also like those are all cars that are financed. So like there's just big notes on them, and I was able to make the payments up until that point. But now all the reserve capital is gone, and you need reserve capital to run a business. And but to get like a big chunk of money back, we basically got a guy to buy one of the Bentleys, and he gave us like whatever it was for it, and we gave him because we're always good at fraud. Like I can take any PDF that you give me and basically make it like I can give me a bank statement. I can make it look like anything. Even up until that point, if I was applying for an apartment, I could make bank statements. I can make anything on PDF editor. So then from there, now I have like some money, and then but the two partners were also still blaming each other for the happened originally, and I kind of had to pick between the two partners, and I ended up picking the one kid that ended up being my co-defendant in the cryptocurrency case.
Yeah.
And
who you didn't like, right?
So now say that again.
So who
I hated this fucking kid.
I thought that was a funny part. Like, didn't even like the guy.
The funny, like that kid, I in high school in a CeeLo game, he had beat my best friend for like $1,000 in high school in a CeeLo game, and I robbed him. Like I always hated this kid from a young age. I hated this kid, and he was just like he never was into drugs, right? Like he was like just a scammer, but he was like this straight edge nerdy scammer,
Yeah.
So I just, I just never liked him. It is what it is. And then, but like he was, when I met him in Florida and I seen like his ability to like finesse shit, and he taught me a lot of like the PDF scan, like with the editing of documents and all this type of stuff. I just saw that there was like value there in the sense of like, if we're not going to make enough off the car business to pay all these loans back, where I can like pay everything off and go back to New York, I was like, we have to figure something else out. And my one boy was saying, we should just stick with the cars. We should stick with the cars. And then he was like, oh no, we should get into this crypto shit. Like he was like investing in crypto, and he was investing in crypto with money that he had stole from our business, which was the whole fucked up thing that people don't realize.
Yeah. So let me just stop real quick, because I just want to back up for just a second on the overdose and the suicide attempt. Like, number one, 60 Xanax pills, like that's insane. Like how it's literally like, I mean, that's a miracle that you even woke up. Number one, which leads me to believe that God does have a bigger purpose for your life. I mean, obviously it continued to go south from there in a lot of different ways for you. But, and then number two, like, did you go to rehab after that? Or how did you kind of get yourself together? And I know your mom, I think in the documentary, it mentions that she kind of helped you kind of get your stuff together. But what did that look like before it went into crypto?
So I never went to rehab in that period. No, I came back to Florida and got more drugs and just continued to do drugs. And you know what's crazy? I just realized, like, as I'm saying this, I jumped like a big part of my addiction. I was addicted to heroin there for a little bit. Oh, wow. That's where those early 20-year-old days, those
like the scaffold
like,
building
days?
Like
the construction shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think like somewhere in that, like, there's like breaks of just like, it was like a year period where I did heroin. And but like I had been to rehab like 12 times up until this point. I've been to rehab 13 times in my life. So like throughout all my teenage years, every year I was going to rehab multiple times. So I've been to rehab a ton of times. So I've always seen the recovery aspect of things. And but just every time I only had like a few months sober, right back on drugs. My mom probably still has debt or owes rehab's money from the amount of times I went to rehab. She always had good insurance, but fucking shit, I went to rehab a lot of times. Like, and anybody that watches the documentary already know that part. That's like the big main focus of the documentary. It's basically like a cryptocurrency company that we made couple $100 million, and that ended up getting shut down by the FBI. And then basically I finally get arrested, right? Like this 2-month period of where like I was basically having seizures pretty much every couple weeks, because I would run out of Xanax. I'm taking 25 plus Xanax every single day. I'd wake up, pop 6 Xannies. Anybody that does 1 Xanny pretty much knows like that's a crazy amount of Xanax to be able to get your tolerance to that. But what it was that like I basically had everybody in South Florida that had Xanax. I was like, I'll buy all your Xanax for full price. And you can get to like tolerance levels that sound fake almost, right? Yeah. Like, it doesn't even sound like I'd be in rehab and people would say that amount. I'd be like, sure. I'm sure you did 25 Xanax, right? But I was popping crazy. 6 Xannies first thing in the morning. So then, these seizures were crazy, right? Like I kept having to go to the hospital, and then I finally get arrested and I go to jail, and like I had done Xannies probably at like 4 in or 3 in. I get arrested at like 5 in. The FBI comes knocking on my door, and your main worry is like withdrawal, obviously, right? Yeah. And I had got to the jail, and like you expect to start really hitting withdrawal like that night, trying to go to sleep, and I just never really experienced withdrawal. And that's where like I'm like, what is that? Not that I didn't experience any withdrawal, but I fell asleep that night. I woke up, I ate breakfast, like those things as an addict, or like anybody knows like how big those things are, because usually you just can't eat, seizures, can't sleep. And like I don't know. Like that's where like I was like an atheist my whole life up until that moment where you're like, holy shit, like something bigger than me is controlling the situation. And there's part of it maybe that has to do with like you're facing 100+ years and you're like, what the hell is going on in my life? And like everything just got kind of taken away from me, this crazy lifestyle that I was living up until that point. That has to do with it too. But the fact that I wasn't having seizures when I was having them a week before was just crazy. Like it didn't make any sense. And you know, and I'm sitting in this jail like in like a suicide suit in like you know, it's like Velcro, it's green. It looks like almost like a Spartan outfit, but with Velcro. And yeah, then like after like a week, they let me go out on bail, and I had still like a ton of Xanax and Suboxones and shit at my house, and I had to go home for the day because the rehab couldn't admit me till the next morning. And like I remember up until that point, like always in my life, like I would have never had the strength to not do drugs like that for one last bow out, obviously, right? Like, and I just was like, they're in my safe. Like I get back to the house and I just didn't do them, you know, like there's something stronger than me that gave me that power to be able to do that. Right.
So you had no withdrawals. You had no withdrawals. I just wanted to clarify that. Like
I don't want to say no withdrawals, right? Like I'm still like sweaty. Normal, I'm still like
the normal, like
yeah, like I had been to rehab. Yeah, and I had been to rehab so many times, and I always was like crying that I was withdrawing so bad, like you know, shaking, sweating, hot, you know, cold sweats like throughout the night, waking up bed soaking wet. My bed was still soaking wet, but like just the fact that like I was able to get through those days and like be a regular human to an extent and eat food, was just crazy.
Crazy. I don't want to stop you, but I am interested in, you said you were atheist, and at this point in your life, something changed in that. I mean, and I'll just like, in all transparency, man, I love Jesus. I'm not a religious dude, but I love Jesus. I love God. I had a spiritual awakening in a moment in my life, and it changed my life. And we've instilled that in our kids and our family. I'm, you know, very imperfect, but you know, it's crazy to me, the difference between trying to live in this world and operate in this world, and like that battle between flesh and spirit. And, you know, some days are better than others, but in any case, I'm curious about that with you, like atheist, something happens, like what happened with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I shouldn't say atheist, because I was more like agnostic in that sense, right? Where like I was always like the hard-headed kid that was like, well, prove it, you know, and there's no way to like a lot of times prove these type of things. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, you know, like I was more atheist is not like, that's like where you just don't believe. I was raised Catholic. My family's like I went to Catholic school, not Catholic school, but like whatever the program is after school. There you go. Catechism. I was baptized. I didn't have my confirmation. My brothers did, but they forgot about me on that one. And then like I still to this day, like religion is a tough one for me. I could debate it with you. Some of the things I say, like I don't want to be like offensive, because like my brothers in recovery super big on religion. My other brothers two of my brothers are really big on religion. As far as it goes with religion, I just have some issues with like almost like the dogmatic beliefs that come along with some of it, like as far as like the bad aspects of shit, where like I don't think it's fair to just base things in things you can't necessarily prove, and never change your stance when it comes to, especially like in, not really in Catholic, but like in other religions, where like that's where like I would just debate. I'm like a nerd in that aspect, where like I've just debated shit like that so many times that like I have this weird stance on it. And but like as far as believing in like something bigger than me, I 100% believe in something bigger than me. I always kind of have. I just was agnostic to it, right? So like I fully respect all religions. I have no issue with any, you know, I'm not the type of person that would be like religion's dumb. You know, it's just that I just never really found like my true faith in that sense, right? Like, but then like after that moment, I always was just like, yo, that was something bigger than me. Yeah. And then like a good story was like so like this whole time I've been sober, I've been on probation or pretrial up until sentencing. And then I've been on probation, right? So like I still have always had this crazy weight of like I can't fuck up, right? So like my real thing I had to be self-aware of is in a year when I'm off probation, that's my real test, right? Like I would never risk it now. But like that's like where I have like, but I have like a great circle around me, wife, kids. I have like 2 friends that I see. I don't really see anybody. All my family's back in my life. I don't see drugs ever, anymore in my life. So like that aspect of it is really good. And then like I remember even like leading up into my sentencing though, like there was this Orthodox Jewish kid that was cutting my hair, and he was like, there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole, and that saying fucking hit me. I was like, that's a good saying. I was like, and that night I definitely did some praying for sure. And I was probably praying to Jesus that night for like if I was gonna pray. I still wear a cross around my neck. Like I have a cross on right now.
Same.
So like it's not like I have no necessarily faith. It's just I kind of all over the place as far as good.
Well, I can relate to you on that too. Like same. Like I was raised Catholic, catechism, confirmation, first communion, and I respect the church, and I respect like my grandparents instilling that in me as a kid. Like I always knew that there was something like higher and bigger, but as I kind of went down my own path, like that kind of went away, and it was all about Shane. And like, so like you mentioned religion a couple times, and I've always had an issue with that though. Like, not you saying it, but religion in general, like there's a difference to me between like religion, like the legalistic part of religion versus like me being able to have a relationship with God, and me being able to speak and pray and to sit in meditation with God myself. Like I respect pastors and priests, and like I said, I respect the church, but I don't need a priest to be a conduit for me to get to that spiritual connection with God, if that makes sense. And like that's been a battle for me too, because I'm much like you in the fact that my wife, she's done some work on me and she's helped me kind of break this wall down. But like I have to logically figure something out. There has to be sense of it. It has to make sense. And if it doesn't, then that's really hard for me to connect to. So there has been a lot of acceptance in that. Like I don't have to have the specific answer, to that. But I know that there is something higher, and I'm just going to do my best to kind of walk in that and, and look at myself and look at my family and look at the world, like through a larger perspective versus just like my skewed, like weird, like jacked up, lens that I can look through sometimes, and that's what's got me in trouble a lot of the times, especially back in the day. But I don't know. Does that make sense? Like just the difference between like religion
no, exactly.
and
it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same thought where it's agnostic. It's the same thought you're saying.
Yeah.
And like I that's exactly what it is. And like especially as men, a lot of times we're trying to find like the solution or the exact like a real answer, and it's hard to find in religion, right? Like some people got some, they found Noah's Ark or whatever it is, but it's tough to fully grasp the fact that like it's an unprovable truth. The one thing that like I don't think anybody can debate is that it's healthy for society to have like a baseline moral ethnic code, and that's what religion gives a lot of people. And I think pretty much anybody can use that for the betterment of society.
Yeah.
As far as like the super extreme dogmatic beliefs that some religions may hold, or in every religion, I think that's where it becomes debatable. But that's like kind of a higher level that doesn't even need to be discussed, as far as like people need a baseline code of morals and ethics that will help everybody. And that's what it provides. And some people try to argue that without, you don't need religion to do that. But, as far as like having something where like everybody can resort to one exact thing, it helps a lot, I think.
Yeah. How about like, have you seen those people that like have the snakes? It's like snake praying and stuff, and that stuff's crazy, dude. I don't know where that's at, somewhere down the South or something, but it's like, oh, look, Uncle Joe's carrying snakes. Have you seen that? Or like, it's crazy.
No, I don't. Dude, I have no idea.
They bring snakes, like, and I don't know if they still do it, but I remember seeing videos of it, and they like literally bring like rattlesnakes, like all kinds of snakes, and like they're like dancing around and like praying and like they're like snake charming. I don't know, weird stuff. They're
trying to make their own religion, you saying?
Maybe it could be. It's definitely strange. I think a dude got bit and died. Like, I don't know. Anyways, yeah, religion can definitely be, dogma. And I mean, you could even get into, and we don't have to get in this now, but like the dogma of 12-step and the dogma of any different types of, a religious foundation or a strong belief foundation. Yeah, but what were you saying before that? I totally lost my train of thought. We were going.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it. Like that's the whole. That's like where I've listened to like a lot of. Like, you ever listen to this debate, which is like a good religious debate? It's Jordan Peterson, debating Sam Harris on religion.
Got it.
If you haven't, you should listen to that. That's a great debate, and that's where it's like they talk about these exact things, and that's where like I was like, I kind of agree with like the non-religious aspect of it, but this is years ago, but this is just me being a nerd. But whatever. Yeah. So that's that. So then basically I think that's pretty much it, right? Like now I'm at a point, right, where like I have, since I got arrested on 4/20/2018. So I have some time under my belt, and I'm pretty much, I have like no real thoughts of drugs anymore, but I definitely have the self-awareness to know that like my real test will be whenever that day comes where I'm off probation and I have like the freedom of just like going out, and it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just gonna go pop a bunch of drugs the first day, but like even this, like the temptation of smoking a joint or whatever it is that will just lead me back into that path. That's where I have to really watch out.
Yeah, for sure. So now that, so have you been able to like make amends for a lot of this stuff and find some healing on both sides, like for you, for the shit that you did?
I mean, I think like I didn't do like the 12-step work, right? But I did it through like where I got my KSAC and I worked with people in addiction, and I kind of would just talk about my trauma, like the things that I did wrong and like how I'm trying to better myself now. And that was kind of me making my amends. As far as like reaching out to, it's hard for me to kind of reach out to every individual person that I fucked over in that sense, because it's like tens of thousands of people that like were involved in this fraud. But yeah, so like I kind of just try to give back as much as possible, and that's really what helps me, claim my sobriety and just stay strong, I think, the more than anything.
How about being like a father now, man? Like, I mean, one of the most craziest things in life, I must say, and challenging sometimes, but like the greatest things. Like I wouldn't change it, for anything. Has that changed you, like as a dude, just being a dad?
Yeah, it's funny. I got two kids. My first kid was in the doc, and they cut him out. I almost feel bad.
Really? Oh shit.
They only put the one that happened the day of the sentencing, because it's a crazy story. But yeah, my first kid I had during COVID, and he's the man. He's like 3.5, and that was like my first, like the first kid is it's crazy. Like it was awesome, and fatherhood's like the best thing ever for me. I needed that. I really did. I needed that, like to have some sort of like reason to like stay, just like as a family unit, and kind of, not having a father as a kid to like prove myself and just stay strong in certain senses, where like a lot of times I would allow my vulnerable side to just get weak and just fall apart. And I think kids help in that sense, where you have to be there for somebody else. And putting somebody else before you is a good thing in pretty much all of life. You need to learn to do that. And then my second one, which is in the documentary, my wife's water broke. I'm facing 175 years. My wife's water broke the day of sentencing that morning. And like I have Netflix filming me that whole day.
Wow.
So like, it was just a fucking
That's crazy.
crazy ass day, you know?
Yeah.
And like
stress.
my wife's water broke, and like my lawyer calls me, and I tell him, and he's like, no way. Like, should we call it? Because my court date had got pushed back for almost a year, 10 times, got pushed back. And my wife's like, no, you're going to court. Like, we need to get this shit over with. And I ended up getting time served. I had cooperated in the case, and I got time served. And thank God for that. And I've been able to be there for my family. I missed my second son's birth by like 20 minutes, which kind of sucked. But they have a cute scene in the documentary where like you see me get the FaceTime from the doctor and my wife, and seeing him for the second time, little redhead, little maniac.
Oh, nice.
And
that's cool.
Yeah, he's the man. He's the man too. He's a nut job though. But I got 2 little boys, and it's fantastic. And my life is just, I got my first house, which I gotta, I'm just basically just trying to grind it out and figure out life in a sense, right? Like I'm still slowly just trying to figure out life. It you got to be patient in that sense, right? Especially now with like I have like this weird path of life, like with all these crimes, and then now I got a documentary out, and I'm like, can I make money off this internet? I don't know what the hell's going on. I feel like a boomer when I'm trying to do shit on there. And I'm just playing around, just having fun with it and seeing where it goes.
Yeah, I love it, man. I appreciate you coming on and being open and just sharing and talking a little bit, and especially just with your recovery and stuff too. And what's next for you before we wrap up today? I know you mentioned a podcast, maybe. I know you've been being featured on a lot of podcasts, and so are you going to start your own? Do you have any plans moving ahead on anything that you want to talk about or plug?
Yeah,
or anything?
Yeah. I'm in the process of building a podcast studio. But yeah, my book is really my thing. That book has got like every story of everything. And I worked so hard in that book over like the last 5 years, and I love this book, man. It's a good book, and it's got like all those cool moments throughout time that like meant a lot to me. So that's really what I'm trying to finish it up and get it edited and whatnot, but that'll be out soon too. And if anybody just wants, just follow me on my socials at Ray Trapani, and check out the documentary. And if you follow me on my socials, you'll see pretty much anything I put out, book, podcast, whatever it is.
Good stuff. And we'll put all those links in the show notes so they're easy for you to find. Dude, thanks again for coming on the show. Share the podcast with a friend, please. I would love it if you did that. You can connect with us on Instagram at That Sober Guy Podcast. Peace, love, and respect. Keep your blood clean.